One of Raila's closest Ugandan allies is a man called Honorable Mike Mukula, who is as far away from a leftist as the North Pole is far from the South. I mean, Mike Mukula is a deal maker. He's just a businessman. That's it. That's what Mike does. He's in politics, yes, but for him, politics is an extension of his business interests. So I think that sort of Mike represented uh, Raila's business interests in Uganda. Then Raila is one of the best friends of the Kabaka of Buganda. It is the strangest of relationships. But every time Raila came to Uganda, he paid a visit to the Kabaka as a personal visitor, and vice versa.
Kabaka.
The Kabaka is a bit like the who is that very
Kind of an
senior
Asante
cultural
Hene,
leader?
kind of.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So like Emir of
Oh,
Kano,
yes. Yeah.
exactly,
Sultan
Yeah.
of Sokoto.
exactly. That
Okay.
status, that status.
Okay.
But you see, if you look at his politics and the politics of, and it's a relationship. I mean, the Kabaka and his family have a long tradition of being to the right of any politics. So you would wonder where.
That's not strange to me. I think that's not strange to me at all. I think rich African men have always been able to align with each other based on personality easier than they have based on ideology. And I think the reason it's strange to you is because you guys still have some semblance of ideology in your politics. In Nigeria, yesterday the ruling party just got a super majority, like the House of Reps lost a lot of members to the ruling party. A sitting governor just moved to the ruling party. And if you're asking how can people change parties like they change underwear, it's because there's no ideology, you know. So there is
Okay,
class, what they call class solidarity amongst rich African men goes a long way.
which takes me neatly to one perhaps of the most consequential transactional relationships that Raila Odinga pulled off, and it took Kenya in a completely different direction. Charles, talk us through how Raila joins Moi, who had been detaining him, and then he goes into Kano and breaks
Yeah.
Moi's. So, do you want to talk? That was, I think, one of his most powerful
Yeah.
moments in the politics of East Africa.
Because Moi had been an adversary, at that time he was president of Kenya. But then the multi-party movement started. It gained steam. And Moi was now very, very weak and threatened. So he desperately needed, a rebalancing, and he needed a strong one of the icons of the opposition movement. And Raila is very, very good at at reading those kind of opportunities. So he goes in and joins, KANU, the ruling party, and just his joining alone already splits the party in two. eh? And
Mm,
then Moi tries to re-engineer the party to accommodate him,
mm,
and Raila then ditches Moi.
yeah, publicly,
And
by the way.
yeah, he ditches him, and he takes basically no. So there are there are certain figures in the party who were looking to be successors, to take over the party, to
Mm,
become secretary general. So Moi throws them under the bus,
mhm,
Mm.
in order to accommodate Raila. And after he had been disaccommodated, Raila ditches him. So he leaves Moi very, very weak. His party is already
mhm,
split. And at that point, Kenya's transition back to a multi-party democracy became inevitable. And
mm,
he did those similar deals after a very, very bitter election against Uhuru. Kenyatta in 2017. Kenyatta was so weak, as Dosua said, um, they probably clearly stole that election, and that they, I think, then Raila realized that he would re-legitimize him if he contested the election. So he realized that he would actually win by not contesting it, particularly after the court thing. So Uhuru Kenyatta was very, very weak. Uhuru Kenyatta was where Moi was in the late 90s. And then Raila goes in there and he does the famous handshake with him. And that that handshake and his influence with Uhuru Kenyatta is one of the things that drives a wedge between Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So he goes into that now, his fifth election, and he loses it, or like he said, he's robbed. And President Ruto comes in power, and during the Gen Z protest, it becomes clear that his base and the legitimacy that he got from the election wasn't enough to counter it. So what happens? He goes into a deal with Raila. So that is, people criticize him for that. They say he's opportunistic, he's unprincipled. But there are people who actually say that Kenya needs that kind of, because unlike a lot of other, you cannot be Raila's permanent enemy. He doesn't he doesn't he was known not to hold grudges. He's a very amiable guy, and so he's someone whom you can, as as they say in the mafia movies, you could always do business with. So and people credit him that if he was not that kind of person, Kenya would have burnt, particularly in 2007. He was very accommodating in 2017, and they are now saying with him gone, the dynamic in Kenyan politics has changed so much because he could secure, he had a lot of influence in Kampala, particularly amongst people in kind of the poorer parts of the city. And those were his troops, the ones whom he would call out and shut down the city. So
Yes.
and he was very influential in Western Kenya and the coast. And he had been able to bring some of that to help prop up and give the Ruto government strength. So this morning already, I mean, if you talk to people, they said, look, the effect of this could be disastrous because all of a sudden, Kenya no longer has a figure who can bring polar opposites together. And they begin to think that what does this actually mean for President Ruto? And they foresee that it
I
could be
have
a
a
very turbulent
question
period.
here.
Yeah.
I have a question here for both of you. And not to go too far away from Raila, but Nigeria also just experienced this with the death of Buhari and everyone clamoring to look like they were the closest to the man because his death leaves a huge gap in the system, right? And I want us to maybe bring this a little bit closer to me in Cameroon. Because Paul Biya and this election that is going on, Paul Biya, 92 years old, a lot of people are saying it's possibly his handlers that are helping him run the election. But what happens in Africa when strong men die? There's a fear of what could happen in Cameroon after Biya dies. But what do you think happens when strong men die, like Aurelia, who's not in power, or like a Biya who currently still is?
Well,
I'm smiling at Charles. Go ahead, Charles. You shoot first. I'll come after.
one of the things that I saw that we see is that one, none of them has been able to see their party survive them. Obote in Uganda, all these guys, that everything that they represented, at the political level, usually dies with them. So probably, the beer party will be gone. We saw it in Uganda with the UPC. We saw it with KANU in in Kenya. So the only party, strangely, which has survived is Tanzania's CCM. But the dynamics of that are slightly different, which explains it. So that is one of the things that these parties, and generally the trend we have seen is we tend to go downward from there because their hairs are usually very narrow. They're usually narrower than them. The 80s, the people who made their political bonds in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s.